What is going on, everybody out there? It's a beautiful day today. I mean, first off, it's Saturday, which is always a good thing. Second off, FPL is right around the corner. It feels like it's going to get released soon because FPL just released their second day in a row of price reveals. So we got lots to talk about today. Let's go ahead and jump into this. All right, first things first, let's go ahead and talk about Liverpool. I think they were the first ones to be announced this morning. I don't know officially because I was sleeping when it happened, but California time, love that 8-hour difference. But there are a few interesting prices here. The first one being Mo Salah. I think the bar was set at least 13 mil at what projected prices were. And so I'm a little surprised he came in at 13, but it does make it a little more interesting. Maybe if it was 13.5, it'd be even more interesting to try to put him in our squads. But with how just he's ruled FPL for the past 4 years, Mr. Consistent, 200 plus, I think 4 years in a row, an FPL Hall of Fame first ballot. With that schedule he's got there with Fulham first, Crystal Palace, and Bournemouth in 3 of those first 4, I feel like he's still going to be picked so heavily. He's going to be very template to start, and he's very captainable in 3 of those 4 matches. So Salah at 13 mil, I think it does. I don't know. I think it's still tricky to me. I think unpopular opinion. I think because a lot of people are probably still going to put him in first in their squad. But I'm really interested to see what Son and Kane come in tomorrow, right? Because if they come in at 11.5, maybe 12. I think maybe I go Haaland and Kane to start. Just spitballing some ideas. Or maybe I'm just thinking too hard, put Salah in, he's the king. Those fixtures just look too good to me. So I think Salah at 13 mil makes it a little bit more interesting. Maybe it makes things a bit of penny pinching on the rest of the squad. But I thought maybe it'd be higher, but that's a good price. At least it makes it interesting is what I should say. I think Trent's the other one too. Trent and Salah both, I think their bars were set at least to 13 mil and 7.5 respectively. And they both came in at that. I think with Trent being at 7.5, I think he's in most squads, especially with Fulham, Crystal Palace again, and Bournemouth. That fixture just screams a couple clean sheets in there. And with him just getting, again, he's going to score 200 points. You got Luis Diaz at 8 mil. You got Jota Darwin at 9. I think Trent outscores all 3 of those guys, most likely, right? And so at 7.5 mil for a defender who's going to get a ton of assists, quite a few clean sheets, I think it's a no-brainer for me. I think I just throw him in, no question. I mean, I will try to debate it here in a little bit, just to play devil's advocate, if you will. But again, 7.5 mil for Trent, I think it's just a no-brainer to throw him in your squad. And then we have Luis Diaz, who, with Mane gone, I thought he'd be a little higher than 8. I think he's... I don't know, man. The tricky thing here is rotation. I think Luis Diaz probably starts most matches. I mean, just at this, we'll see what happens with preseason. We'll see what happens going forward. But 8 mil for someone who could potentially start in that front 3, I think those are pretty. I think if he does maintain and hold down that that left wing spot, I think the template is probably going to be Mo, Trent, and Diaz holding down that front line, and we'll go triple up with Liverpool. But it'll be very interesting again because there's a lot of rotation. They have a lot of quality players, a lot of depth. I mean, maybe Jota sneaks in, they throw things around. Maybe Darwin, Firmino. I don't know how they're going to experiment, but just rotate things around. But I think Diaz at 8 mil, especially as things get going later on, as we find out who's really balling out this season, maybe becomes a no-brainer here in the future. But I think for me, at this point, I mean, going into preseason, it's probably a wait and see with him, but it just looks really tempting at 8 mil. I think, again, a couple things I also want to bring up with Liverpool. Alisson at 5.5 mil. It's nice to see him not at 6 mil. Maybe it makes things a bit more interesting going at keeper. Cheap way to get in that defense. Alisson at 5.5. And here's where I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate. You got Van Dijk and you have Robertson coming in at 6.5 mil and 7 respectively. It's kind of tempting. Kind of tempting. Let's just play. Van Dijk is going to score probably about 170 points if I'd expect around the whole season. If that's 30, 40 less than Trent, that's 1 point less a match, essentially. And you got to save a mil. So maybe you just go cheaper and just throw on Van Dijk and hope you get a couple clean sheets, maybe a cheeky goal here and there, as he's known to do. So maybe at the beginning of the season when you're trying to save money, maybe go with Van Dijk. And again, Robbo at the end of this last season... If y'all remember last season, Robbo didn't blink for it felt like forever for someone who didn't have Robbo for a while, but he was just getting so many attacking returns, so many clean sheets to end the year. maybe go differential and go Robbo and see how things go. But I think maybe the double up with Trent and Robbo is the play, because they're probably going to score more than Diaz, Jota, and Darwin at this season. But again, there's so much to see as we go into the season, as we get things going. But a triple up with Liverpool, I think these prices are pretty fair, and I think they're going to help us to triple up on them as best as we can. But again, there's still so many other players that we have to see before we even start plugging in our teams. But that's Liverpool. Overall, I think it's a nice price. It could have been a lot worse. And then next up, we got United. Ronaldo's the first one on the list here, but from what I've been reading, maybe Ronaldo doesn't even stay with the team next year. He might leave this summer. We'll happen to see with that. So I'm just going to push that one to the side for now and worry about it later. But for now, there are some huge names ringing in my ear right now. A couple of things really stood out to me. One was Bruno. Now, I know he didn't have the best season last year, but y'all remember a couple seasons ago, this dude was in everybody's team, and he was absolutely balling out. Maybe he has a season like that where he kind of returns back to who King Bruno once was, as far as getting attacking returns. Maybe feels more comfortable with the new manager. There's a lot to be seen. I think that he could be an interesting one. The only problem here that for me is the schedule. I think Brighton's a bit tough to start. I think they still potentially win that game. They got Liverpool for the third match. So it's not the best schedule, especially considering other premiums out there have better fixtures. And on top of that, United didn't necessarily perform that well last year. A bit below standard. And will a new manager help them out? And will they play a new system and really take off running? It'll be interesting to see. But outside of Bruno, the two things that really, really stick out to me is Sancho and Marcus Rashford. I mean, you can... I know Rashford hasn't been playing well last year. I think he's... I mean, it's no question he was struggling last year on the pitch. But if he gets any form back at all, $6.5 million? $6.5 million for him. I just think that is a crazy price. Again, I know that it's a bit tough. He struggled last year. I know it's still a lot to see, but I think at $6.5 million, it could be tempting if he starts picking up any kind of form. If he starts turning into the Rashford that we thought he'd become a couple years ago, maybe you're wrong with it. And at this point, too, you look at Rashford at $6.5 million and say, am I going to take a punt on Rashford at $6.5 million, or am I going to take a punt on, let's say, Harrison for Leeds at $6 million, whatever it may be, or some other names we'll get into later. But I got bit by a mosquito in the middle of this. I don't know if I can go back and see that. But Rashford at $6.5 million, I think that's any form at all, any sense of Marcus Rashford's nailed on. He's looking incredible with this new manager. He's really getting things clicking. And $6.5 million is just the cheapest price for someone who can absolutely go off this year. But again, let's wait and see what happens. And then you got, again, Sancho. Like, you saw what he did in the Bundesliga. Yeah, he struggled a little bit last year, but sometimes it takes getting to a new team, a new league. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time before you really get things figured out and get running. So maybe Sancho is the same as Rashford. Maybe they're just so cheap once they start getting going. But I know, again, they struggled. United did not look that good last year. They still have a lot of things to fix. I don't think it's just the manager. I think it's a lot more than what we're seeing. Is it locker room? Is it things behind the scenes? We'll see. But again, if they get things running, if they start cooking a little bit and y'all start smelling it, you smell what the Rock is cooking. 7.5 and $6 million for those two is very, very nice. Very nice, Borat. Other than that, De Gea at $5 million could be a great pick. I love that they made it a little bit. It sounds like they're making it a bit more fun for us to pick keepers. Usually it's just a $4.5 million and let it just ride until we see what a $4.5 million keeper does well. Whether it's Pope one year, Martinez the other, Ramsdale last year. But he could be a good price at $5.5 million. I still don't trust that United defense, but there are a couple really good picks, I think, with Sancho and Rashford being the biggest two, and potentially Bruno as we get going. All right, now we got Wolverhampton. Let's start with their fixtures, right? 3 of their first 4, Really good opportunities for a clean sheet. Now, I do say that I marked this as green here on the chart for Newcastle, but the way Newcastle ended last year, I think that's more of a gray. I think Newcastle is a tougher fixture than that. I've already edited it, so I don't want to go back and redo it, but I think that's a bit tougher of a fixture. But the first 2 games with Leeds and Fulham, especially if Rafinha's gone, and that Wolverhampton defense, we could see a couple cleanies. And so you look at that and you see Salah at 5 mil, not 5.5. You see Salah at 5 mil and think, that might be a bargain, right? And then you see Johnny, who's coming back, I believe, from an ACL last year. I think he got some time at the end, but fact check me if I'm wrong. Johnny at 4.5 mil, very attacking on a defense who's pretty solid. That's nice. I thought maybe they'd flip Cody, because they had Cody at 4.5 mil. I know he scored a lot last year, but Johnny at 4.5 mil, if he's nailed on for those first 2 matches, I think it's great. And I think after game week 4, I think Wolverhampton have a bit tougher of a fixture run. But for me, I like to plan the first 4 game weeks when I'm starting the season. So that's what I'm looking at. And 4.5 mil for a defender in that Wolverhampton, I think that's a good price. He'll be competing with White, in my opinion, maybe Tomiyasu. Jimenez at 7 mil. That's not bad. That's not bad. I know Raul Jimenez didn't do as well last year. It was just great to see him play, first thing. But 7 mil for a striker right now is pretty nice. I mean, Bamford, I think, is 7.5. I think, I guess we'll get into Ollie Watkins here in a minute, but I think he might be the best priced striker. But again, I don't know if I trust any Wolverhampton attacking options, especially with, some really good cheaper options out there. But Jimenez could be one to keep an eye out for. Absolutely. But that's what I think of Wolverhampton. I mean, their defense is pretty cheap again, with Semedo being 5, Ait-Nouri being 4.5. If he gets nailed on as well, that's another great option to go along Johnny. Potence at 5.5 could be great. NATO at 5.5 could be. We'll see. So there's Huang at 6 mil last year. He did really good for a few game weeks there in a row. So I guess what I'm trying to say with Wolverhampton is they could become a team that is an enabler that allows us to get some more premium options out there. Some really good cheap prices if they can hit the ground running to start the season. But I think their fixtures kind of get tougher after game week 4. So this could be a later in the season kind of a thing. But if you want to attack those first 2 game weeks, maybe Johnny or Ait-Nouri is a play. So then we got Fulham. Going into the season, there was a lot of talk with Fulham. Mostly with Mitrovic. This dude went wild last season. I mean, I don't know how much he scored off the top of my head, but I want to say it was a lot. Like in my head, I'm thinking 40, but I don't know if it's that much, and I don't want to pull up the stats while I'm talking right now, but Mitrovic went off last season. And 2 seasons ago, when he was in the Prem, I think it was 2 seasons ago, he struggled to start. He struggled in the Premier League. He didn't really get going, and he even had a great season the season before that in the Championship. So we got essentially fooled once, is what I've seen a lot on Twitter. Are we going to get fooled again? Right? I think that's what the play is. But regardless of what you think about how good he could be, 6.5 mil is a good price for a striker that's most likely going to be starting consistently for Fulham. But I just look at this first fixtures. Liverpool at home, no thank you. Wolverhampton away, no thanks. I mean, he could, but that's not necessarily the odds are in our favor on that one. Brentford's a good one, but then Arsenal in game week 4. So I don't know what those fixtures, if I trust going with any Fulham players. Also, I want to see how they do getting used to the Prem here. A couple other ones I want to talk about. I mean, a 4.5 mil keeper is nice, but again, those fixtures. I think the 2 ones on the side here with Harry Wilson, dude, again, same as Mitrovic, went off last season. He did well a couple seasons ago in the Prem, if I'm not mistaken, but he comes in at 6 mil. He could be a great option here in the future, but not yet. Not yet, in my opinion. I just don't like that fixture run. Even though Harry Wilson could be a great player for Fulham this year, for me, it's just a wait and see. I don't want to do it. But if you're looking for an enabler, I think he could be someone that's very popular when his fixtures start clearing up. And then De Cordova Reed, I liked his game last year. When I watched him play, I liked it. And at 5.5 mil, him and Wilson, if they get a good run of fixtures and Fulham are starting to maybe click a little bit, that could be nice. Really nice. All right, last one, I believe. Yep, last one. Aston Villa. Now, there are a couple prices here that are very interesting, but for the most part, it's kind of what we expected. Luka Dean at 5 mil. Cue the It's a Trap meme. You have Coutinho at 7 mil. You have Watkins at 7.5. I think all those are great prices. Cash, Martinez, both at 5. Even Big Daddy Ings. Big Daddy Kane. Danny Ings coming at 7 mil. But for me, I just want to focus on Coutinho and Watkins first. I think they're both pretty decently priced. They could be coming into a good amount of squads, considering it'll allow us to get into more premium assets, especially with that fixture run, right? You got Bournemouth first game, Everton second game, Crystal Palace third. 2 of those first 3 could be potential relegation squads. And so you're looking at that and saying Watkins and Coutinho could go off, right? And for me, I trust Watkins probably more than I trust Coutinho to get attacking returns. And so Watkins could be a popular pick here moving forward. 7.5 mil makes it a bit tricky because I think it's not necessarily. I don't know. It's a good price for Watkins is what I should say. But he could be a popular pick, very template here going into game week 1 with those first 3 fixtures. Cash is a great option at 5 mil. Martinez, if you want to go keeper. We all know how incredible he was a couple seasons ago. One of my faves, but cash at 5 mil could get you some attacking returns. But for me, I think that the standout here is Ollie Watkins at 7.5 mil. The only problem is, do we trust forwards this year? Are we going to go, I don't know. But yeah, Ollie Watkins is a standout here, especially with those fixture runs. Kamara could be nice. Danny Ings could be nice. Ramsey at 5.5. Maybe I thought they'd go a little more expensive. I liked his game last year, but I think 5.5 mil is a good price. But I don't know. That's it for Aston Villa. That was it for the video, too. Let me know what you think. I know it's a bit of a longer video, but hopefully you enjoyed it. I'm going to be back with some reactions tomorrow to whatever they're going to drop. I'm assuming it's going to be some Chelsea assets in there. I'm really excited to see what Reece James brings to the table. But either way, thank you all for watching. I can't wait for FPL to drop soon. And I will definitely have my first draft as soon as it does, really quickly, unless it's on the 4th of July. Then as an American, I will, be a little too soused. Anyway, have a great day. Take some time every day to make someone smile. Enjoy life. Let's go. Let me know what you guys think, if there's any players I missed and what players stood out to you. Peace.